Imagine you're an entrepreneur ready to enter the Chinese market. You're prepared to invest millions, but one wrong move could jeopardize everything: your brand, your budget, and your sanity. What would you do? Robin Tabas, partner at Acclime and director at R&P China Lawyers, has spent over a decade guiding international companies through the legal, cultural, and strategic complexities of the Chinese market. Today, he shares why being too direct in China can land you in hot water, how he helped clients establish themselves in China, and what 15 years of navigating risk and success have taught him. If you want to know how to thrive, not just survive in China, this episode is for you. Welcome to Made in China.
Made in China. Von der Werkbank der Welt zum größten Konsumentenmarkt und Technologieführer. Eine Reise durch das Leben, Business und die Kultur im Reich der Mitte mit Damian Maib und Thomas Derksen.
A very warm welcome to our Made in China podcast. It's once again an episode in English and once again three good-looking men sitting in Damian's office in Shanghai, and we are very happy that Robin Tabas is here in our office. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So we start with three quick questions we didn't send you before, but you can see it on your script now. And Damian, let's start.
Perfect. Well, a warm welcome, Robin, again to our office. We know each other since now many years. So how do you spend a perfect Sunday? I would probably know, but we want to hear the answer from you.
Ooh, very nice one. You know, perfect Sunday these days is looking a lot centered at family. You know, I'm a family man now, so I have a Shanghainese wife. I have a 7-year-old son. So we'll be in the summer probably spending some time in a park or with some friends and you know, have the kids running around, and we'll have some food afterwards. That's usually how I spend my Sundays. And in the evening, I'll probably watch some Premier League football.
And having nice brunch at Shangkangli, where we meet, where we run into each other.
We run into each other sometimes there, yeah. No, yeah. We get a lot of business lunches there, right? It's close to my office.
Yeah.
So I do spend a lot of days there, but typically not in the weekends. A little bit far from home, right? I live in the suburbs, as they call it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, as a family man, it's a good choice. So the next question is, if you could have dinner with anyone, alive or dead, who would it be? Is it a hard question for you?
It is. So. It would be a very hard question, yeah. Because I'm not a guy who likes idols. Like, I don't idealize anyone. Uh-huh. I think that's my Dutch heritage there, right? Where we say just be very normal. Mm-hmm. I think right now I'll probably want to talk to Trump to understand if all of it is an act or if a lot of it is real, because he's saying many things that are conflicting himself. So it's either one way or the other way, and maybe the coming 4 years will tell us a lot more, but I think it's an act.
Yeah, it's totally different to us Germans. We like to idolize people, right? As we showed in history.
Yeah, some do, some don't. But Trump is a nice choice. What was your most remarkable travel experience?
For me, I think that's an easy one. I did spend some time with my wife traveling in the Philippines, and we were quite used to having a bit of a nice holiday, right? Spend some time at a hotel, some beaches, have some food. In Philippines, we did a lot more local. So we used to travel by bus a lot instead of taxis. I don't know if you've been to the Philippines, but they have these local buses. I think they call them jeepneys. And you can sit on the roof. Mm-hmm. So I first went to sit on the roof myself, and then I could convince my wife, you know, in fear of her own life, to join me on the roof. And this is really amazing. You know, when the sun goes down, you sit there in between luggage of other people. You know, sometimes some luggage falls off and the jeepney stops. And then, you know, you continue your journey. I think that for me was a really remarkable trip. And I look at that photo a lot, actually.
Well, you didn't
of us sitting on top of the jeepney. Someone took that photo, yeah.
You didn't have any children at the time.
No, exactly.
That explains your risk versity. So yeah, you've been in China since 2010, and your main job, as I understand, like you're a lawyer, right? And you're supporting international companies with market entry and expansion right now. Could you briefly tell us what initially brought you to China?
Sure. So after I graduated and worked a little bit in Amsterdam, I decided to travel around the world. My plan was to travel for 6 months. Turned out to be almost 15. And I spent time in a lot of countries. I think I visited about 20 to 25 countries at the time. Lived in Australia. Didn't want to leave there, but at some point, you gotta move on. I was working there, and if you get out of the travel mood too much, I was a little bit afraid to get stuck. So I decided to travel on. And I was in Singapore, and one of my friends saw that I was in Singapore, and he just got to China. And he says, China is amazing. This was in 15 years ago. And I said, China is not really a country to travel. So I don't think I'm going to come because I want to go to Southeast Asia. I want to go to Japan. He said, I'm going to buy a ticket for you. So we arranged, and I flew from, I think it was Kuala Lumpur to Hangzhou with AirAsia on a dirt cheap ticket. Took the bus on a Friday, and I arrived at his place. We had dinner. We went to the Bund. We had an amazing time. I had an amazing weekend, and I decided to stay for a little bit there. So he really brought me to China here. He's still here, Jesse, one of my best friends from university and here in Shanghai. So, sometimes the small things would bring you very big opportunities.
Well, very nice. And yeah, as Thomas said, you are a lawyer. You're also a businessman at the same time, right? You work for R&P, but you also have a role at Acclime, one of the very fast growing accounting companies in China and in Asia. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what you do and what excites you most.
Sure. So 14 years ago, I started working with my partner who founded our law firm, R&P China Lawyers. We're a Chinese law firm focusing on foreign companies doing business in China or with China. We've grown a lot over the years. Very exciting, right? We started with a team of 5. Now we have a team of almost 70. Then about 10 years ago, I got a lot of requests from clients to find a good accountant. And that turned out to be not very easy in China. There's a couple of foreign players, but usually they had local teams. And obviously with an accountant, you can talk to the local teams a lot. With a lawyer, the relationship is a little bit different. So clients like to talk to me directly or to my other foreign colleagues. And then we got our experts who are the core of our firm. Obviously, they got all the knowledge. And clients were asking us, can you do the same for our accounting and tax needs? And so I talked to my partner, and we decided to take a leap of faith and onboard some clients and find an accountant to do the work. And actually, one of our earliest clients, I think our 3rd or 4th client, was Aldi, the German grocery, well known to you. And we helped them to expand in China and set up their own stores, both on the legal side, but also on the accounting and tax side. For us, working 5 years in a law firm, growing it, and then going into another area that is adjacent to the law, right? The teams work a lot together. Was just very exciting. It was something new, right? So I try to tell people in Europe, back home for me is the Netherlands. I try to explain to them that China is extremely fast. It's way faster than any country in Europe that we would consider to be fast growing, right? So it's the same for our businesses. We're always looking for what's new, where's the market going to go to. That's not a 10-year plan. That's not even a 5-year plan in China, especially not in services. We know this in COVID. The world changed a lot. We also know that foreign companies were coming to China to buy goods, but now everyone wants to sell goods. So also our business model completely changed. We were not helping manufacturers and trading companies. We were helping brands and retailers to conquer the Chinese market. So with us taking that step was just super exciting. Then in 2020, we teamed up with two of our old friends from our network who just started this company called Acclime, essentially competing with the Big Four. Now, by no means we're the Big Four, but we do like to see ourselves competing with them, and that's actually what we're doing. We see that in the market in some of the mandates. So we're very advisory driven, very service driven rather than products just to make sure that your accounts are filed or your payroll is filed. Is very strategic, right? So we're like external in-house HR, in-house finance manager of a lot of our clients, and this has worked very well. Then we had COVID. I had a bit of time to spend not traveling, not going back home, so I decided to co-found some businesses, as you, Damien, know. And that's been very, very exciting. And that's what excites me, I think, most at this moment. I still spend most of my time at our law firm, at our accounting firm. But a good chunk of my time goes to helping these businesses that I co-found going to the next level. And I'm very selective in a way that I do like to work with friends. So this is what most people say, do not do business with friends. And I think a lot of times it goes wrong. And that's usually about money. If you accept that you take the risk, then what's the worst thing that can happen? Mm-hmm. You lose the money, right? So I'm okay to do that. I know that the people that I surround myself with, the friends that I've chosen, are people that are very driven, and they will put in all the work. And if it doesn't work, there's many reasons why it doesn't work. It could be you didn't put enough effort in, but for most companies, that's not the case. There's a lot of other factors. So if you're just willing to accept the risk of doing business, I think it's great to do that with friends because there's a high level of trust and there's also a very high level of fun. And this for me is key after having a very stable business for 10 years at a time, now for 15 years. I'm okay to do projects that excite me a lot and that bring a lot to Shanghai. Or now I recently started a company in the Netherlands as well, expanding in Europe. To help the people that I know in the Netherlands with building something beautiful that's good for consumers.
Yes, sounds very exciting indeed. And with all this bridging between East and West, with all the communication you do, what are the most differences you encounter in this job?
I've answered this question before. The interesting part is that within Europe, there's also a lot of cultural differences. So if I look at this, for instance, Germany and the Netherlands, there's a difference in directness, right? The Dutch will always be very direct. And while there are some Germans that are direct, a lot of Germans are a bit more reserved in the beginning. They, I would say, have a more concept of face for themselves and of others. In the Netherlands, it's very much about me, about us, right?
No, Robin, you're totally wrong.
So for China, that difference is so big, right? I come in like an elephant in a porcelain closet, and I say exactly what I think, and that doesn't work very well in China. So I remember I was here for 6 months. For a client, I had to terminate their general manager because the manager did a lot of things that are not very appropriate, both from a management perspective, from a financial perspective. My mandate was to go there and confront this employee and try to get a settlement, try to get a resignation. The client didn't want to fight or battle this very much. So with my Dutch mindset, I thought that's going to be very easy. I'm going to walk in there like Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Terminator. And I brought one of my Chinese partners and I said, I will do the talking. So I started and I could not finish my first sentence before my partner interrupted because I started, I'm here because the company found certain things. That was my first sentence. And then my partner jumped in, my Chinese partner, and she said, Thank you for working so hard for the company for 10 years. We heard you did amazing things for the clients. We heard you brought their business in China prosperity, that you increased the team so much that you make sure that they have the best suppliers in China so the company could thrive in Europe. And then she went on for another 5 minutes, some of the things she said in Chinese. And then she went back to English and said, as Robin was saying, we have found some irregularities that we find a little bit concerning, and we would like to have your take on this. I've learned that the Dutch approach in culture, but also in business, of directness does not always work. It's beautiful because it goes very quick, but it can also backfire extremely quick. So in this case, we managed to get into a settlement in a very peaceful way. And I think without the support of my Chinese colleague, it would have gone very differently. So I've taken that lesson to heart, and I've taken a very different approach in everything I did afterwards to say, you could start first a little bit less direct, take a bit more time. I think it's also about the efficiency, right? We want to be very efficient, but it's not always good for a relationship. It's not always good for projects that you run. I think that's by far the biggest difference that I've experienced.
Perfect. Yeah, very nice and vivid example. Thank you for sharing that. And I always think most of the brands and companies who should be in China, they're actually already here, right? And not so many are still out there solely in the, let's say, Western world, who still need to come to China. But let's say those who are not in China yet. What are the most important first steps for these companies when they enter the market? And maybe for those who are already here, what is concerning most at the moment?
Yeah, so for companies that are still looking at the Chinese market, I presume these are brands, companies that want to sell their products or services in China. The key is to register your trademark before you even come to China. And I'm doing a lot of IP. So every year I come across 30 or 40 brands that are already registered by a former agent, former distributor, by a supplier, by an employee who went to a trade fair, by any consumer who went to the United States or to Germany and saw this product and thought, okay, they have a future in China, let me register it. China applies a first to file system. If they file first, I'm going to have a hard time to get that trademark back to the client in a short period of time. And time is what clients usually do not have. So even before you go to a trade fair, even before you consider to research China, you should register your trademark. If you spend money on a flight, you should definitely spend 300 euro on registering your trademark in the core class. And this is what so many companies do not do. So that's step one. Then step two is not a legal or a financial driven factor. It's more commercial. If you're not in China yet, you really need to do proper research as to whether there's a market for your product or your service. Obviously, China is a big country, and everyone says, if I have 0.001% of the population as my customer, then I will be successful. Yes, but China is the playground of the world. Every company in the whole world wants to sell their products into China because everyone thinks this way. So you really need to understand, what is my USP? How much time do I have? How much money? Because it is likely not going to be profitable in the first few years. And then later on, as there are many examples, it will be very profitable if you have a certain level of reputation. But to get to that reputation might take a very long time. This is what most companies do wrong, that they come into the market, that they probably do not have a viable product. They still spend a lot of money, especially multinationals, and then they spend $1-3 million US in 1 year just to learn that actually for China, there are too many competitors in their segment that have better products. That could be foreign brands, but it could also be Chinese brands, depending on what industry you're in. I think this is really key. Then obviously, if you come to the market, you got to do research on who you're going to work with and where you're going to play.
I saw you posting about new and stricter rules concerning unethical employee behavior. What does it mean? I think it's a very interesting term. And how can companies act to better protect themselves?
Yeah, so I've been working on fraud investigations for a very long time, right? As a firm, we have many multinational clients and they got all their local teams here. But the one thing that they really use us for is when there are suspicions of fraud. So they typically can't rely on their own staff, even their senior management staff in China, because maybe they're involved or maybe people are involved that they have a good relationship with. So they engage outside counsel, and we're known to be an expert in that field in compliance investigations. In these cases, the frustrating part for us is that even we have abundant proof that managers, employees have taken financial benefits from their position, which is usually they've accepted bribes or they're derouting payments to their own companies or just to their own personal accounts or personal accounts of family members. They are smart. So a lot of those seemingly illegal practices are not necessarily illegal, and they might not meet the criminal threshold. So for us, it's all very easy, right? If you work for a company and you are getting a kickback from a supplier or from a distributor, then that's not allowed because that money should go to the company. But in China, traditionally, this is how the whole economy runs, and it's changing a lot. But this was reality of the day. The law is also not very clear on this, right? A lot is about your company rules. So if your sister sets up a trading company and that trading company is in between your customer and the company you work for, if you're an employee of a, say, German company, how are we going to prove that that sister got the business because of the employee? We're gonna subpoena their WeChat, their phone records. This is very difficult. We can see in the system that that's the sister, but is that prohibited under the law? It's not. So it should be prohibited under your company rules. So this is the biggest challenge that we've been dealing with, that companies do not have proper company rules, where they have a handbook, and in the handbook it doesn't say clear enough your first degree or second degree family members cannot have any business relationship with our own company or with our customers or our suppliers. If they do, you need to ask for approval, right? Or you need to report it in case they don't hold it themselves, right? The family member need to report it. If then you don't report, maybe, well, you could have a reason to terminate the employee. And this is number one, you want to terminate the employee and don't pay severance, right? Otherwise, they did something wrong, you fire them and you pay them a severance fee. So they win the jackpot twice. All right, so that's where it starts. Now, going back to that illegal activity, so the law made it more clear on what is allowed and what is not allowed, and when employees could face criminal liability if they conduct in a fraudulent way. So this opens up for us the door to negotiations with these employees. Yes, we could go to the authorities, to the PSB, let's call it, to the police, and then report it, and then we start a civil lawsuit, or we use that to get a settlement with these employees because the law is now much stricter. So this is very important for German, European, Western companies that are doing business in China and that have been dealing with a lot of these issues. Because it's easier for us now to combat, it's likely a reason for employees to be a bit more careful and not engage in that type of behavior.
Yeah, makes sense. And then, how important is your ability to represent clients in court or in arbitration proceedings?
Sure. So I'm a foreigner. I'm not part of the People's Republic of China in terms of citizenship or passport holder. So I cannot represent clients directly. No foreigner can. We as a firm can. We are going to courts quite often. I think about 25% of our mandates are either in court, mostly in court, sometimes in arbitration. I think it's important beyond that point of where we actually go to court for clients. It's also understanding what is possible in the system. It's also sending a message to the counterparts of our clients when we're negotiating, that they know that we can go to court and we will go to court if there is not a reasonable settlement offer. In any relationships that you will have, any business relationship, no one wants to go to court, right? Both parties, it's a long way. But if the other party knows that you cannot go to court, they know that whatever the settlement will be, you will always recommend your client to take it, because you can't bring them to court. So you need to send them to another law firm, right? So I've seen in the past that some foreign law firms, in my opinion, too easily recommend to settle, where I think sometimes you need to draw the line and say, well, I do not accept this. I'm going to court. It will take some time. Some clients have told me, I rather pay legal fees to you than pay more than to my counterparts, because they really don't deserve it by the way that they've been doing business with me. So I think it's important. So we understand, we can put pressure. And thirdly, we understand how to draft contracts, because we go to court all the time. We understand how important the contracts and the evidence is, and the follow-up orders, right? So Damien, you're in the e-commerce. You sign contracts with your clients and the terms change all the time. You got statements of work. Yeah. The best way is to document that very well. If you don't document it, it's more difficult to pursue that in court. So these are the things that we can recommend our clients way better, because we do go to court.
Yeah, and most businessmen, they have like a hands-on mentality, and they are willing to take risks. And a lot of lawyers are the other way around. They say, whoa, let's take a step back and we have to think about the risk. Now you're both. You're a lawyer and a businessman. How do these two roles, or this experience from these two roles, help each other, or sometimes also hinder each other?
Yeah, it's your best question so far.
Thank you. It's question number 10.
This is really challenging, right? I have a lot of MNC clients. They want everything to be compliant, especially American clients. And that's obviously the best way to do business, because your risk is smaller. But it also comes at a price, and especially on the commercial side, right? So in every company, the salespeople are always fighting with the legal counsels or with the lawyers, because they want to get that contract signed, but the terms are just not really acceptable. And this, in the long run, is obviously not good for the company. If you have one badly executed agreement, I'm not even talking about a contract, just the terms that you agree to, right? That's fine. But if that's your practice and you have 100, that becomes a liability. So it is very important to do that. But if you're a small company, you don't have the budget. You don't have the budget for a lawyer. You might not even have the time for yourself to review the contract if you don't want to spend money on a lawyer. So you're taking risks. And I think that's very normal for small businesses, that you take risks. As you know, I co-founded some businesses, and I'm not reviewing all these contracts either. There's just no time in the day to do all that. We're also taking some risks. I think there's a couple of areas where you would then have to make sure you're not cutting corners. I think employment is definitely one of them. I think it's getting a lot better in China, but back in the days, there were a lot of companies that did not contribute according to the actual salary. That was a big thing, because it makes employment, unfortunately, a lot more expensive, but not doing so can hunt you back forever. Same is for taxes, right? So false VPA's, not having proper bookkeeping. Your books are forever. The tax office can go back for a very long time. So it's really too risky to not be compliant in these areas. I think if you want to be budget conscious, you do that on the more commercial side.
Very good. And now last but not least, if you could give companies only one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would say it's choosing a good advisor. It will be very difficult for you to choose a good business partner if you decide to cooperate with a Chinese company. It will be very difficult for you to choose a good general manager because you likely do not know this person. This person also has a lot of self-interest. Either if it's a company or if it's that individual, the interests are typically not fully aligned. If you have an advisor, your interests with the advisor are very likely more aligned than the interest with the partner that you would work with. So through an advisor, you can get more insurance, so to say, and you get a long-term partnership that is not necessarily business-wise, right? That could be just on an advisory role for the years to come. And maybe your partners, your business partners come and go, maybe your general managers come and go, but then you have someone that understands China that you can trust. I see too many companies not doing that. They rely purely on one person or purely on one relationship, which is a Chinese relationship, I mean, in this case, because don't get me wrong, if you want to do very local business, it can be quite important to work with Chinese, right? If you want to set up a big company, your general manager, I recommend, is Chinese. If you have super big plans for China, your joint venture partner better be Chinese. So you need to mitigate some of these risks, maybe work with a foreign advisor that has been in China for a very long time, that has a very good track record. So you have someone that has a good understanding of how the Western world works, but also very good understanding of how the Chinese world works.
Robin, thank you so much for sacrificing 1 hour of your valuable time for us and our listeners. We learned a lot, and I'm sure that everyone who listened to here also learned a lot. And if they have any questions, they can connect with you on LinkedIn or on other platforms. And thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Perfect. Thank you, Robin.